Hey everybody, welcome back to Poquito Podcast. I'm Dominic Angel.
And I'm Ryan Reyes.
Before we get into today's episode, we want to remind you that we have a live show coming up on June 15th in Inglewood that's going to be hosted by us, the Poquito Boys, along with previous guest Sylvia Deanda. It's going to be a emotional release experience, a safe space for us to all cry and laugh and sing together. There's going to be a sad footage compilation. There's going to be live stand-up by me and Sylvia and plenty of others. We're going to have a sad art market, and we're going to finish off the night with karaoke, all sad songs, hosted by Jerry from Live at Jerry's. It's going to be a fun night. All the info's in the event description. Hope to see you there.
Also, be sure to like, subscribe, follow us, leave a comment, rate and review us, and check out our public Discord. It's free to join, and there's a lot of cool stuff up there. Enjoy the episode.
Poquito, poquito, poquito podcast. Poquito, poquito, poquito podcast. Poquito, poquito, poquito.
This fucking guy.
That escalated hard.
Yeah.
Hard
I made a Hitler reference in front of a Jewish person who's...
But he did it in a way that made it sound like we all dressed up as Hitler.
Yeah, I did. It was bad. I was referencing the night you guys had when you told your Hitler joke.
We're having a conversation.
The Hitler joke.
I hate when someone tells someone about my joke and it just sounds bad.
I said, "Oh, the Hitler night."
He said the Hitler night.
Like, oh yeah,
yeah.
we all
was
have
like,
our
oh, yeah.
cards.
And then this fool fucking had a panic attack.
Tell me, 420?
He was like, it really takes more context than that to explain. And
But the thing is, like, even if you explain the context of the joke, it's still like
it's like insensitive to make a joke about Hitler to a Jewish person.
It's not even about that. It's just the way that you presented everything. Seer, here's the thing that you do sometimes, where you'll throw you poke the bear. You do things in a way that's
Jew bear.
That's
Nice.
The bear Jew.
you
Oh, yeah,
do
I'm
things in a way
racist.
where you're like, it should be fine. I should be able to say things like they want to be normal too. Like,
Yeah. I do
and
feel
so
that way.
you do it on purpose, and you overstep.
My thing was, it was like you were acting like this person never heard of Hitler before or something.
I wasn't acting like that. I was like, why did you call it Hitler night?
I know.
Like if it was,
Like Five Nights at Freddy's.
like if we went to
was-
fucking emo night, like
Yeah,
Zebulon, and everybody was dressed up
He's like, I still got my wristband.
yeah. I was,
It's on my arm. So I kind of fucked that up a little bit. That was rude. That was rude of me, and I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just being. He was calling it poke the bear, but that's not what I was doing. I do that on purpose sometimes. I do, but that's not what was happening. I was just being casual about it, and I was like, "Oh, that was the biggest joke of the night. That was the night you guys did that." So I was like, "Oh."
That was the night everything changed.
I was like, we did the Eminem joke, we did the fucking.
All those jokes paled in comparison.
Listen, guy. No, they didn't.
Anytime I heard anyone talk about it, they were like, "Dude, that Hitler joke was hilarious." When they were talking about that night.
It was historical.
The joke, the context of the joke, the
right.
reference of it.
It's a great joke, though.
It's a great joke.
I do get worried that people are going to misunderstand that joke
I wouldn't.
because they're going to think like, "Isn't it funny? Hitler's gay," and the joke is like, "Well, if you don't let people be who they are, they're going to be the worst version of themselves." Is my point of view.
Yeah.
You didn't say the joke. You
No, I
didn't.
was saying just let me be me, and I won't be the worst me. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
Like you're in a musical right now.
Huh?
I gotta be me.
Well, when you try to make someone into something they're not, you're going to get a worse version of them, right? Maybe that's a better point.
Are you guys rapping right now?
Just the way you said it is like, if you're trying to say it again.
I'm losing it. Which part? The first one or the second
The
one?
very last thing.
If you make someone be something they're not, they're going to be be a worse version of themselves.
Every time you say that line, I keep thinking you're going to say, if you try to make someone into something they're not, you're going to get Hitler.
I mean, in a way, right? Like
Every time.
Some kind of Hitler.
yeah, it's going to be a soup
Some
Hitler.
kind of Hitler. That's funny.
I think, I mean, there's a fine line because it's like you shouldn't think about that, but like I don't know, be open and receptive. The thing is about a joke like that, or just jokes in general, is that there's always going to be somebody that misconstrues what you're saying.
And sometimes they're going to do that intentionally, regardless of your efforts.
Yeah,
For
there
sure.
are people that will like be upset just the fact that you mention Hitler.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, which is crazy. Like, it's been long enough. I think we can make fun of Hitler now, right? We have 9/11 jokes. I love that 9/11's been a joke recently. It's like people have been making hella 9/11 jokes. It's like to the kids, they don't even fucking care at all.
They don't. Yeah, they're not. They don't even get it.
Yeah.
I know, dude. It's crazy, and they're just like, "Oh, 9/11," like it's a punchline.
Like a phone call. 9/11.
I don't know why
Hello.
I did that.
Hello, America's calling.
Yeah, like a prank phone call. So stupid. Sorry.
are your twin towers running?
Well, listen to this.
The Pentagon.
Listen to this.
You don't understand. You look at. Please listen to this.
It's just someone screaming that a plane hit the second tower. Sorry, that was too much.
Yeah, that was too much.
Everyone gets mad at me. I'll take the bullet.
Let's say you look at the black sheep. When you just keep the inappropriate joke going, you're like, shut up.
yeah, that's right.
That stuff is crazy though, because are we boring you?
He was doing the airplane sound again.
Well, the whole like the Gilbert Gottfried thing, right? Like he got
Yeah.
in trouble because he referenced 9/11 in like the roast,
Yeah.
like right after. It was like 2 weeks had passed or something.
Yeah.
But his thing, like that he had said was, you either make jokes now or you don't make jokes. Because it's like, well, who are you to say when is enough time?
Yeah, there's part of me that does agree. It like I'm of two minds. Like I kind of agree with that, but it's also like, yeah, I don't want to force people to enjoy these jokes or try to enjoy these jokes.
Yeah,
but it's
especially-
also like, why are you watching a roast if roasts are crazy, right?
That's true.
You're gonna say something?
If you can't joke about travesty, is it even a roast?
I think it being a recent thing, it does matter. Like, you can't make fun of someone's like dead family member right then. You gotta
Right.
wait
You gotta know who the friend is.
for sure.
I think it's all context.
Yeah.
Gilbert Gottfried's a New York comic. Like,
It's true.
he's from the city. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
If I remember correctly, there was a lot of comedians. There was kind of like a divide, and there was like a lot of comedians who were like, "No, we need to get back out there and bring the happy. This is our time. This is what we're for."
but it all, I don't
This
know.
is all I can do.
It's a weird. It's just a weird thing. I don't like when comics like hold themselves like bask in holy light, like of like we're. It's our responsibility to bring levity to tragedy. Like
right.
you can do that, but to be like
This is
the
why
way
I
of doing
do
it. No, it just is like I'm gonna like to do that, but also make insensitive jokes and be like,
That's true.
and to say like I'm making insensitive jokes because we need to be able to laugh about tragedy. Like I don't agree with the type of people that do that are assholes. Gilbert Gottfried's doing it for other reasons. Like he's doing it to be like we either don't make jokes about it or we do it now. Like
I think that matters because like it does bother me when those dudes, you know, it's like the dudes that shout free speech, but they're just like, can I just make racist jokes again? Like that's their energy when they
Yeah.
talk about free speech. Like, no, I agree. We should be able to joke about a lot of these things, but it's like have anything creative to do with it. I don't know.
it's
Be
also,
humble. I was just saying that. Tag.
It's also the thing I don't like about it is that they don't accept the other side of that as comedy. So like it's like
Right.
an extreme from the other perspective of like there's like the super woke comic that doesn't like these like off-color jokes. There's the pendulum swinging in the other direction where it's just like, oh, it's all about being funny. Funny is funny, and you know you can make jokes about whatever, and then it's until I make jokes about Republicans or white people that they're like, oh, this liberal fucking
Yeah.
bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, it's
that's
the
stupid.
same thing where they're fighting for their holy cow.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they still have a holy thing they're protecting, right?
Yeah.
And that's the hypocrisy of that is frustrating to me. Well, that's kind of why I'm making that joke that Hitler joke is because I'm making fun of, like, part of it is a reaction to like all those alpha male dudes that are like, you know, I'm an alpha male, you know, a man, you know, is tough and they don't care who they offend.
Right.
But then they're very sensitive about anything that they value.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing because it's the funny thing is that I've always had, because when I started doing comedy, I was more in line with like PC woke shit than I was like comedy is comedy. And so now more recently I'm like opening up to things, but it's hard because it's all about like case by case, like like context matters, who's telling the joke matters, what is the intention of the joke, what is the purpose of the joke. I think that all matters because we should be able to make I don't know, it's like we should be able to make jokes about anything. And I've opened myself up to being like, you know, there is room for everybody, for all types of humor, because there are people that just like, it's for the people that don't get it, that are not into like edgy dark humor, it's always going to be wrong to them. But there are people who just like that style of humor and that don't like think anything. They don't use it to like fuel hatred.
Yeah, because it always like boils down to like there are people in that experience and outside of the experience that will appreciate it and not like it from either camp, right? If you want to do this like false dichotomy, like people that have a lot of trauma tend to like this darker, heavier stuff because they're like, hey, I need to laugh about this stuff. And there's these other people that have been through that stuff and like, oh, I don't want to hear this stuff anymore.
Right.
And I think that's valid, but it's also like context and nuance, like them. But there is a space for this. A space like this deserves to exist, and you can't force it on people that don't even want to be part of it.
Actually, I haven't talked to you about this, Ricky, and I was thinking about this because a while back I was dating somebody that is into comedy and into like the kink community, and they were talking to me about how like we were talking about comedy and they didn't like dark edgy humor, racist humor, any of that stuff. And then but also like it was interesting to me because being in the kink community and like doing scenes and all that stuff, I was like, well, like why, what? It just kind of occurred to me, the thought of like, why is it okay to explore these like darker sides of ourselves in this context, but when it comes to like humor and making jokes, it's not okay.
I think if there is a distinction to be distinct, I'm just going to speak from my point of view. If there is a distinction to be made, like as far as kink goes, it's basically sexy improv, right? Like I'm making it sound real dumb right now, but it kind of is just that. You define your kind of, well, it's a little not quite improv, but you're defining your roles and you're very much negotiating, if it's done pretty well, the terms and conditions of how you guys are going to do this stuff. Whereas in comedy, that stuff is not very much communicated and it's felt out in public in a group of people. And it's a group where some people want this edgier, darker stuff and also agree, whereas the rest of the audience isn't inherently agreeing to this. Because comedy is like, there is no genre. You just show up. So there could be like a distinction made there. But to me, it's hard because it's like, in kink, it's all very much negotiated.
I get what you're saying. Like everybody shows up, like there's consent made before anything goes down. And when you go to a comedy show, certain types of comedy shows, like if it's just a showcase, you're probably not going to get that.
Like as far as comedy, there is there's an assumption of some consent that we're gonna say some wild stuff to some degree, right? But there's no conversation on what the limit is. In fact, it's just left open.
I think the only time that matters, I'll just say this, and then I know Josh has something to say, but The only time that I think that matters is in like a original room style showcase where
Yeah.
there's like 30 comics throughout the night, and like you don't know who you're gonna get.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you're buying tickets and you have a lineup, or it's advertised a certain way. I mean, I don't know how things used to be, but if we're talking about present time, like people generally know what their lineup is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's also changing. Audiences are niching down. Like audiences are becoming very specific to certain comics and artists. So people have a much more informed take on who they're going to see. But there's still just comedy clubs that exist that people are just showing up to.
Right.
So that's always still, it's gotten way more different. Like you're saying, like it's more specific.
That's what I was gonna say. What he was saying, I had something to say. I was gonna say we get shows now like Kill Tony or like what are those guys?
Legion of Skanks.
Legion of Skanks.
Yeah.
And it's like when you go to a Legion of Skanks show, you know you're not about to get some woke. There's
Not
not
at
going to be
all.
any woke comedians
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
Right.
So the people who want that kind of thing, like that's kind of like the they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I already know this is my comedy.
This is what I
kink.
signed up for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the other distinction to be made
Right.
is that
What are you doing?
I was
Playing.
stretching and I tapped the thing.
You've been drawing.
Huh?
Are you drawing?
No.
the other distinction to be made is kink outside of like 50 Shades of Grey, which is it's a bad representation
Right.
of all that.
Boring.
It doesn't have as much as a overarching effect on culture and the world, whereas comedy somehow does.
I hear what you're saying, and I know that you're not in this moment. You're not necessarily making an argument of like what you personally believe.
Yeah.
You're kind of just touching on what
Like
that viewpoint
that
might
perceptions.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're playing. You're filling in for that
Yeah.
role. So, but I just like there's it. I guess it's just like comedy is a vehicle to explore. Like for me,
Yeah.
I explore racism. I explore sexuality in a lot of my jokes. On my side, I think I get a pass, especially being in LA, where like I remember one time I got into it with a guy after a show because I was doing my jokes like my Chicano Batman joke and like about like how white people say weird shit in public. And this guy came up to me and like got into a debate with me after the show, like, and wanted to know my political views and was talking about like turning it into a conversation about guns and Democrats and Republicans and all this stuff because I did that joke. Like he was trying to challenge me because I was like, I heard your spiel about white people. Like, what about this? Blah, blah, blah. And I think in general, I get a pass, but it's like, if you look at my material from the other end, like that's very similar to somebody that's just making like a white guy making Mexican jokes or making whatever, and then it's like, okay, well, if it's okay for me to do this, and even though in my head I'm speaking towards oppression, I'm speaking towards racism, social institutions, is there room to, because I listen to a lot of like comedy, not comedy podcasts, but people talking about comedy, like comedy review. It's comedy conversations in comedy or whatever, but from people that don't do stand up, and it's like you hear a lot of people talk about how like when you talk about Patrice O'Neal, he's offensive. He's a misogynistic like comedian, but at the same time he's hilarious. And there's people that are super leftist, like anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-misogyny, that like recognize that he's hilarious, like he's a great comedian. And so then it becomes like, okay, well, is there room to explore these sides of ourselves and these thoughts in stand-up?
I think I'm inclined to believe yes. As someone that has been a Patrice O'Neal fan and thought it was really funny, I think I trusted that he wasn't actually that bad person. And that could be me trying to make myself feel better for finding that stuff funny, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of comics where I don't trust them. They can make these jokes and sometimes they are funny. but I don't believe they're actually a decent enough person to be making these jokes that they could take any of that back at them. That they could ever like. I don't know. Maybe that's just me rationalizing it, but to me, I think it comes down to like a trust that you're actually still viewing the people you're talking about as people.
Right.
That you actually aren't just dehumanizing people.
Right.
And it's like, that's just hard to know. Ultimately, you're kind of just, some people it's obvious to see, like, oh, that person, like, I don't know, it's not quite related, but Bill Maher and Bill Burr were on a podcast together.
Right.
And Bill Maher is just self-aggrandizing. He just thinks less of everybody. And Bill Burr is another kind of the same example of kind of like a Patrice of like, he'll talk shit about a lot of people, women specifically, but then at the end of the day, he ends up seeming like a decent person that cares about people.
Right.
Like if you listen to him on podcasts,
Right. For
he's
me,
self-reflective. I don't know.
no. I was gonna say for me, you on stage, you kind of get a free pass. Like, if you're gonna be funny, I'm not gonna be like, unless it's something crazy, like we all know you beat the shit out of your wife or something, and then you're on stage making like how it's funny to hit girls jokes.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna be like, this is crazy. What's happening right now? This is nuts.
a bad person.
But if I don't really know, and it's just like I'm not gonna. Like, there's a few people that go up on Chatterbox, and like I'm sure they're not the best people, but there's a few jokes I got. I'm like, these aren't bad jokes. These are funny.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of one of those people who's like, as long as you got a solid joke, I'm not going to think you're a good or bad person because you have a funny joke. I'm just going to think that you have a good or bad joke.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm kind of the same way. I think that there's a misunderstanding about what dark humor's center is, because people think it's just the whole pushing envelope. People think the funny thing about it is that it's outlandish, and that is part of it, but the point of it is never the topic. It's always the punchline. Like, as long as it's still a viable joke, then it works. And if you're not focused on the structure of the joke itself, then you're just going on stage and saying like racist, sexist shit.
For sure. But I do think it's good to explore those dark themes, and I do think that there is a difference between. I'm not in a kink community. I'm plain Jane vanilla scoop. Sorry, but I do think that there's a huge difference between like that kink stuff and what's happening in comedy. I don't think they're the same. One makes me come.
To the show?
Yeah.
What do you think about?
The other makes him come
we've
to
talked-
the show.
We've talked a little bit about this before, I feel like, but like the responsibility of the performer of their audience.
Yeah, it's something I still kind. I mean, I'm not at a level where like it's a very present concern, but it's something I do think about. Like, I mean, even my concern earlier is kind of tied to that, right?
I think yes, but I think that like you have a responsibility to let people know that these are jokes and that you don't think that this like Anthony Jeselnik, he always comes up in these conversations because I think he makes like the dark, like he makes super dark jokes that anybody would enjoy, but it fits more in line with somebody like Legion of Skanks. But Legion of Skanks gets a lot of flack because they're about free speech, and they're about like, but they let in a lot of people in their community that like that pushes the boundaries of like what's acceptable behavior. And it's not just about the jokes or the content, it's about behavior and a culture. Where somebody like Anthony Jeselnik makes it very clear that he thinks anyone that thinks the way that his onstage persona is he doesn't like it. He like speaks against it if you actually listen to him in interviews and other areas.
He also doesn't present himself like a crazy person. He's like got a very like clean thing, and like the Legions of Skanks dudes, like that's more about like being grimier.
Right,
it's very grimy.
Right. I don't know if I know I've told you guys about it. I don't know if I brought it up on the podcast, but I had this idea. I was thinking back about stuff about the conversation about whether or not a comedian or an artist should be responsible for their fans comes up, and one of the things I remembered when I was thinking about that was one is the Dave Chappelle story about how like he realized that like people were laughing at him and not like seeing that he was like talking about racism. he was helping like feed racism,
Right.
and that was a big push. But like, one of my favorite jokes that I saw when I was a kid was like Ron White on the Blue Collar Comedy special, where he does a joke that's he has a metal plate in his head and he got it put in Mexico, and before the doctor put it in, he said, "Be careful, the plate is hot." Which is one of the best jokes I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
It's a great joke. But the thing that was crazy that I realized was like he made that joke and then the audience erupts, everybody's laughing, but they cut to these two guys, these two white dudes, and they're like, yeah, like they're like, I'm glad he said that. Like they're not laughing, they're not clapping, they're like cheering that he made that joke.
I was gonna say, as an editor, I never believe the cut is from what we're watching, but also I could imagine myself being an editor and being like, dude, look at these white guys cheering. Like, we should put this after the Mexican joke. It'll be hilarious. It looks like he's cheering for but I understand what you're saying.
But you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying.
But
Because
that
whether or
exists.
not that actually happened, that's put out there
It's
in
there.
that way.
Yeah, it
It's
looks
there.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a lot of those things.
And it's the Blue Collar Comedy Tour for Are You a Redneck type shit.
Well, I think in
Yeah.
a similar vein to, sorry,
No, it's fine.
I think in a similar vein to dark comedy, there's a misconception about like the definition of blue collar comedy, because
That's what
you see comedians when they're getting older and they're getting more successful and they're kind of like chilling out. A lot of them go through this route where they're trying to relate to their audience, and so instead of doing jokes about their lives, they start doing topical humor, and they're kind of saying the same things over. Like I'll reference specifically. I listened to Gabriel Iglesias' special a couple years ago, and the biggest thing I noticed was he was doing a lot of like woke, anti-woke, like Facebook liberal humor, and people weren't laughing, they were cheering, they were clapping. And it was, and that's the thing of like when people are going not for comedy itself, but just to hear somebody agree with them.
Right.
You know, I think in a similar vein, they're misunderstanding the point of things.
Right, but I do think there is also the aspect of like you believe these things too, and when someone makes a joke where it's on your side, you're like, "Whoo, got them," kind of a thing. So it like amplifies that look for somebody who's not aligned with that kind of thing. You're being like, "Look at these fucking sick people; they're all agreeing with each other."
I think that that's exacerbated by popularity.
Well, I will also point out that in my comparison, I'm not talking about Gabriel Iglesias saying stuff that people agree with. I'm talking about Ron White making a racist joke and people cheering for the joke. Like I'm talking about an actual joke. So like these people are going for comedy, right?
Right.
In this context,
Okay.
I see
Okay.
what you're saying with the Gabriel Iglesias thing, and like people cheering because somebody's saying something that they agree with. But in like what I'm pointing out is like Ron White made a joke. There was a punchline,
Right.
and like I said, I love the joke. I think it's hilarious.
It is.
But to see like people cheering that on about like fuck Mexicans, like that does something.
Is that
Well, that's what it
they were
was-
cheering?
That's how it comes off.
Why?
Because the plate is hot is like, yeah, they're here to serve us.
It's like any chance to make fun of Mexicans for being Mexican.
He's cheering because he
Right.
mentioned
Got it,
Mexicans,
got it.
not because the joke was. And that's where I was trying to connect it. Of like, that's how that develops into the thing I'm talking about, where it's like, for some people, they're just going for that sense of gratification, and not for the show itself.
Yeah, and I think that increases as the popularity increases, because you lose more and more control, I think, as you get bigger. Because I think there's a way to like, I haven't been through it, so I'm like,
Right.
this is all conjecture. Like, I think you can cultivate a fan base. Like, this is who I am. Like, look at like Maria Bamford. Look at like Mark Maron. They're pretty big, but they do kind of cultivate a certain audience. But I think if you break those levels, if you go even higher, then you start becoming this like symbol more
Yeah.
than anything.
The thing that's so crazy for me about the Gabriel Iglesias thing is that he was never. It's interesting because he was never a offensive comic. You know, he had some off-color jokes here and there, but he talks about marriage. He talks about being a parent. He talks about like being fat. Obviously, a lot of stuff growing up in LA. He talks about all these things that are very relatable, and has made it an effort to not be political. And you can argue about whether or not like taking a stance on wokeness is political, but it's like this is when you decide that you have to stand up to something. Like he was never going to be affected by free speech stuff or like cancel culture.
Yeah.
I can imagine some people criticizing him for body shaming and saying that he's feeding into a negative stereotype of obesity.
The thing about all that stuff though is that
I'm just saying I could see it.
I could. Yes, but the counter to that is that like when you're in that, you have the choice of how you want to relate your experience.
Right.
So it's like it's
Okay.
on a very oversimplified comparison is the N-word. Right, like black people can say the N-word. That's they have control over that, or they could choose to not say it.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody that's in the community that is fat wants to make jokes about themselves for that. They have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that is what part of what was to me personally like disappointing about his special is like Dominic was saying, he didn't have to do it in the sense of like he was never the guy that was being threatened with that. Personally, how I feel about it, this is my conjecture about how I perceived like what I see from him, is he slowly just like stopped running out of moments. You know what I mean? And to the point where like I don't know if you know about like the beef he started having with people about taking their stories for his, he's telling their stories from his perspective. And stuff like that. It's just like
He
after
took a lot of Felipe's stories.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. Like
but it wasn't just like in,
I think I did hear about that,
apparently like in his live shows. Not that he didn't steal jokes, but he stole moments. If that makes sense. Not even steal, but he like told stories from. But what I'm saying is he stopped running out of his stories, and so he started trying to create.
Started running out of.
Yes. Started running out of his stories, and he just needed to find ways to be, because that was how he sold himself, was the blue collar guy. But now it's like he's not blue collar anymore. Has specials and TV shows and for a while, like a whole functioning network of media. And so he, unless he regurgitated the same stories, he no longer had jokes about, his little kid was an adult now in college. Like he for a while he was joking about being on the road, but then that became a thing. His jokes were about him doing comedy, which is like,
and I can understand
self-eating
that.
snake,
Yeah, I can understand that though. Like when you're writing your jokes based on your experiences, and then you're so busy all the time that you don't have anything besides being out there. And it kind of becomes
Sebastian
limiting.
Maniscalco talked about like he does the tour, he does his special, and then he takes a ton of time off
just to go have life.
Yeah, you gotta have to have a life, and I think that's kind of why some of these dudes, specifically dudes, end up leaning into that anti-woke stuff.
Yeah.
Is because they're kind of addicted to this grind and possibly the money specifically.
No, for sure.
But also the validation of the performance. If your ego really gets fully wrapped in, I think that's like a danger. Like this is fun and fulfilling, but if your ego gets caught up in it, tied into like the adulation and the money, and you can't pull away from that, what do you have left? Would be like woke culture. Like, it's an easy crutch.
You can't slow down your pace, but you also can't like risk watering down the impact. So you go for something that's easily tappable, low hanging fruit.
Right.
Yeah.
Allegedly, the people in Legion of Skanks, like some of them don't like their audience. Like they like do it because they know that there's a market for it.
And
Allegedly.
it's not just that there's a market for it, but it's after you build this machine, like it starts steamrolling, and like you have managers and you have marketing
that's a good
and you
point.
have a lot of things, a lot of bills to pay, and you need this money to be coming in. You
And
can't
that's
just
the more
take off.
reasonable point of view of
Right,
like,
yeah.
Well, I just mean like there's people that make the shift into anti-woke comedy or persona podcasts and stuff, because there's a huge market for that.
No, for sure. But like, have you seen Gabriel Iglesias' house? Have you seen his car garage?
No.
He's like fucking 50 Volkswagen buses.
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
I mean,
I've
it costs
heard
a
of that.
shit ton of
Yeah.
money to maintenance all those
Yeah.
goddamn cars.
Yeah.
And to keep them running and stuff. You know what I mean? Just that alone probably cost him an insane amount of money.
It really could.
Yeah, but he was doing that without doing any of this, like calling out cancel culture or whatever. Yeah.
But I think that's what I'm saying is like he after a while you dip into what you have available
That's
because
what
you
I'm
don't want to
saying.
slow
Yeah.
down.
And I think that's a really I think that's a fair assessment. Like that's what anyone would do if they don't stop.
It's hard. It's hard to be funny constantly and be relevant and have a unique perspective.
Yeah. Because the thing is, you'll get comfortable, or you'll get afraid, or just be afraid because that's reasonable.
This is where capitalism comes into play.
It's
just a comparison. It's a comparison. It's not. This isn't going to turn into a whole thing about capitalism, but it's like capitalism is based on growth, right?
Right.
So,
and that fool's growing.
Every year you're expected to outperform the previous year.
Right.
And so, like, if a company makes $100 million in 1 year, and then next year they make $100 million, they're considered failing.
Yeah. A loss.
It's a loss because there's not growth, right? So then that's what becomes like, yeah, you get one bus, and then you get two buses, and you get 50 buses, and you get a bigger house.
Yeah.
You get
It's not wrong though. I mean, like in terms of like fishbowl, it's usually a fishbowl situation. You get a bigger fishbowl, you can't use the same amount of water. You have to use more water. You have to use more stuff to fill that bowl.
I guess it becomes a question of like personal drive, like not drive.
The fish will live in a half-filled bowl, but it's gonna look stupid.
It doesn't care about looking anyway.
I know it doesn't. Well, I mean,
but I just mean like,
Does it? Yeah.
do you
Have the
need
time.
all of this stuff? And it's hard to say, listen, I'm not in this position. I'll probably not be in this position, but it's like, when does enough become enough?
Yeah.
And you have to keep moving that goalpost and keep chasing that thing of like achieving all of this stuff. And it's nice to have.
I get what you're saying, and yeah. What do we need? We don't need anything Diogenes. You know what I mean? All we need is a bowl, and not even that.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, you don't. It doesn't feel like that.
The other thing I was going to say too is like, yeah, like
We're splurging with the boys.
not right.
We're going
we were
to
talking
Luke's
about this.
Chris. And we're eating steaks.
But I just mean like,
God, I can't wait till that night happens with those boys.
but I just to do something that you've loved for so long, or even if it's just like a major part of your life, like if you take somebody being a performer and like wanting to keep going for as long as possible, and you relate that to like our grandparents. Like my grandpa is in his 60s and he still works full time, and he like does like hard labor, but it's like to feel satisfaction in like contributing and doing something that you like doing,
Yeah.
versus feeling restless or feeling directionless.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that's like concerning to me because I listen to these guys. I listen to these comics that are successful, like Fluffy. A lot of these guys, and I'll listen to their regrets sometimes, and it scares me. Despite everything they've gotten, their regrets scare me, like legitimately.
I always have a hard time with those because, like, to me, everything's grass is always greener.
Yeah.
So, like, in hindsight, all those things become clear, but sometimes you have to make those decisions, even though it's a
Yeah.
regret or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if they wouldn't have done certain things, I don't know what you're specifically saying.
Well,
but
like Fluffy openly talks about it. He's talked about it a lot, where like he missed his mom's funeral.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's tied into like family beef stuff too.
Right.
But he's been talking about it more and more and more, and I've heard it for a while now, and it's like, that's terrifying.
yeah, it is.
to be so looped into that pursuit.
Yeah.
That's your safe. That's your way of hiding.
I actually, sorry, I'm going to say something real quick. I actually think about this a lot because I live far from my parents, and it's like I don't have a bad relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
We're all good.
Yeah.
but I do think about like how I'm spending time here, following my dreams or whatever, and and I think about how like my parents are getting older, and I'm not gonna be able to spend as much time with them, and like I always think, because my parents travel for a living, I'm always like, one day I'm gonna get a phone call and they're gonna be like, your dad died on a plane or something from a heart attack or something like that. You know what I mean? You're laughing at my dad dying right now? It's crazy.
No, it's 'cause
I'm not being genuine.
I confuse the images in my head, dude. Like one guy go, "Hey son, I'm dead." Click.
Basically, that's probably what it'll feel like. But I think about that. You know what I mean? And it's like, am I boring you?
He's like, boo-hoo, my dad's
I know.
imaginarily
This guy
dead.
won't shut the fuck up about his dad dying. He's not even dead. He could see him whenever he wants.
He's texting him like canceled.
That's funny. But yeah, so I think about that though, about like I'm losing time with my family actively by doing the things I want to do and like having fun.
Yeah, and I think part of that's normal, right?
Right.
What I'm afraid of it is, because you're going to miss things. And you're just farther from them, so it's harder to make connection in time, right? But like,
Kinda. My dad was here this weekend and he's like, you want to have lunch? I was like, nah.
oh yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah,
you know?
that's why I was like, I gotta go to a show. I'm gonna go do these things.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? And it's like, I don't see them that much. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Should have invited him.
but
Yeah.
but you're also not like, that wasn't also like a pivotal moment.
Right. True.
Like
no,
that-
I know, but it will be when my dad dies.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, I should have gone to lunch with him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I guess I'm only looking at the extremes of it, of like being so wrapped up in this where like
Yeah.
maybe I'm missing all of the important stuff, and I don't think I want to go that far.
It just, you have to really take time to reflect on what you value.
Yeah.
Like what's really important to you, because like the thing is like you have to succeed in what we want to do, you have to be giving it your all, and it's very hard to take any time away from
Yeah.
things. But at the same time, sometimes I stop and think about, is me missing one show gonna make or break me in
Yeah,
the long
yeah.
run?
I was
Like, is me missing one thing and having lunch with my dad instead gonna be the thing that like keeps me from success?
And that's important. That's an important thought. And I was told recently not to mention being a nihilist anymore. But I think this is something that nihilism helps me with. And it's like, whether I go to dinner with my dad or whether I go to a show or whether I don't do either of those things, it'll all be the same in the end. And that's a comforting thing for me. So I'm like, just focus on what you're focusing on. The grass is greener where you water it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. My friend Ember put out this like rock opera, and she had a write up, like somebody interviewed her about it, and that was one of the things she said. She put out this album. She recorded it during quarantine and put it out on vinyl, and like it was a long, hard process. But she says in the interview that one of the reasons she did it was because she realized, like, if she follows all of her dreams, and if all of her dreams come true, she's gonna die, and if they don't, she's still gonna die.
Yeah.
So might as well just do the thing. Try to do the thing. Right?
and that's kind of where I'm starting to get to, is like, but I also don't want to be so afraid of missing out that I don't pursue any of this, and then I'm just
Yeah.
that miserable guy around my family. Like, there's a balance to this. Like,
No, for sure. Because
Yeah.
I feel that when I'm like with my family, like I'll have like dinner with, or like lunch or something, and I'll just be like, I should be working on something right now. Like, what am I doing right here? Talking about my fucking cousins. Give a fuck about my goddamn cousins.
Right. What I was listening to Chris DiStefano on his first Joe Rogan episode that he did.
was that recent?
He just did one a couple weeks ago, but his first one was last year, I think.
Okay.
Oh wow.
And he had put out a special, or maybe it was longer than that. It doesn't matter. But the first time he went on to like promote his special on Netflix. It was his first thing. And one thing that he said that like really, so he did 2 interviews. The reason why I became interested, when I first saw Chris DiStefano like popping up in comedy, like on podcasts and stuff, I didn't really like him. He's not my vibe. But then I saw that clip that he had when he was a guest on Two Bears with Bert, and he was talking about like, he started crying because he was like, my kids are growing up in front of me, like I'm like seeing them grow up through a phone. And so, how do you work through that, like, and make the decisions of like how to live your life as a professional? And so then he went on Joe Rogan and talks about how he walked into a meeting, he shot his special and like was shopping it around, and he walked into Netflix and was like, just so you know, I'm okay with where I'm at. And so I would like to do this special with you, but it has to be done. You have to leave it alone. I'm not cutting anything out of it because I put this out the way that I wanted it to. And like he said, with all due respect, I don't need this. Like, I'm fine, you know?
Wow. That's very awesome. That's fucking hardcore.
Yeah.
That's
Because someone like me, I'd be like, fucking do what you want to me, Netflix. Fucking
Yeah,
give me that
exactly.
check.
But
dude.
I think that's like how you don't lose yourself,
No,
right?
for sure.
Like I think that's, and you know, if you're the wrong, you could also be that could be dumb to say for certain people.
Yeah.
But
that could kill someone's career, probably.
yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure. And he also left, like, he got offered to do, he's done multiple things like that. He did that, and he like got offered to host this thing, and it was going to pay him like a shit ton of money, and he was like, can't do it. I have to stay in New York. Like, I have to have the weekends with my kids.
And I think that's why it's important to get good first.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
he's
You make those
comfortable and he knows,
decisions.
and he knows his skill level, you know. And like for me, I'm new, and people like have asked me to do some shows, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it because I feel like I'm not ready. And like
Right.
I know like that can be a limiting thing at a point, but I feel like you shouldn't get too big for your
but yeah,
britches.
you're also newish
Yeah.
anyway.
No,
like
yeah.
it's not scary. It's not scary to say no. I mean, you're funny.
I've heard of people doing stuff like that where it's like with Letterman, where somebody gets offered Letterman and they're like, thanks.
Gulp.
But they're like, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And then they come back next year and they audition for
And
it.
how like that's just always going to be impressive to be like, I have something, but it's not ready for that yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like that self knowledge and trust is like, that's crazy, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is a big thing for all of us.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
in our 30s, except this guy.
Yeah.
But just like pursuing the thing and then finding a balance and like being okay with where things are at.
And there's something to be said where like you can get real delusional about this, but there's something to be said when you're doing this and you start to get good, you start to feel what's real.
For
like,
sure.
There is that invisible wave you start to catch where like even if it's small, you're like, this is different. Like the things that are coming to me are because of all this time I've spent without realizing something was going to come out of it.
Yeah. Once you start hitting, everything start moving quickly and it feels like you came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But
That's what she said. Sorry.
There he is.
It's actually been happening for like 5 minutes. We've been on like on a tear that I've been like,
5 minutes.
still going.
Where have you been? Everything.
But
Sorry.
But yeah, you start to feel these, and I'm not saying it's like things are flying open for me, but I was like, I'm starting to feel something, and I don't think I'm crazy about it.
did you stop?
I didn't do anything. I saw your eyebrows going crazy. Your ears are moving left and right.
She said,
And I don't think I'm crazy.
Balance is definitely necessary. It's kind of a crazy thing. Like, I was going to say this a few seconds ago, though. The one thing I learned from rap a long time ago is that you can this is just something you do, and it's something I told you when you said that dumbass shit about quitting comedy. I was like, no, you're not, buddy. Fucking, this is you. This is a thing. Like, once you build this skill set, once you create these neural pathways in your brain, like you'll go back to them
You've
over
literally
and
changed
over.
who you are.
You're not just changed who you are, but you like see things a certain way now.
Yeah.
I was comparing it to I was like, when you play too much Tony Hawk, and then after a while you start seeing stuff in real life, you're like, I could skate that.
No, that's
You know what I mean? It's the same thing with joke making. Like,
Yeah.
you've made this thing in your brain that cooks jokes, and you'll do that now. And it's not, even if you quit comedy and you never get back on stage, you'll be like, that's a joke. This is a joke, and you'll be doing that.
like I try to be present in my experiences, but there's times where like I think I'm kind of present, but joke ideas start popping up, and just the moments I'm
Yeah, it's just a
experiencing
thing.
them.
All people do, like ex bodybuilders, are like,
But also, like, I don't know, you find ways. I'm very big on being okay with letting things go, because there are ways that you can. Yeah, you're right that is something that I do, but then you find other ways to make it work. Right?
100%.
So like, for me recently was I edited a bunch of clips for Good Grief, June 15th, come through. But like, I worked on those clips, you know, and I was like, dude, that clip that I did with Outside of Chatterbox with Gigi and Vinny Vega, that took me an hour. And I was able to like, just like cut real fast. Like,
You already knew.
yeah. I knew as I was recording, like, okay, these are going to be, this is how it's going to go down. And like finding the jokes. And then even with the clips that you sent, which I thought were good. We already talked about this. I'm not criticizing you. But after I watched them twice and I was like, these are good to go. And then we posted them and they were live. And I was like, fuck. I immediately saw two parts.
I knew all of those parts too. When you said it, I was like, oh, any of that could have been cut. And I was kind of looking for someone to...
Are we boring you?
Dude, this guy's been so bored this whole episode. He's drawing, he's yawning, he's fucking not here.
What do you think?
Where'd he go? Yeah. Oh, I wish I had a clean plate. I already knew those things needed to be edited out. I was kind of sending it to the group to be like, which one of these things should be edited out, because I attached to them all. Like every time I saw one, I'm like, this is good. And then I was like, it wasn't enough to make 2 clips out of it. So I like put it all together and I was like, I know something needs to be cut and I just can't choose.
It's interesting.
Every mother thinks they have the most beautiful child.
I
That's
just
what
had
call
this
it.
conversation yesterday with Neftali. I don't know if you guys know him.
No.
I recorded something with him, and he knows that's his weakness, and he's like, I gotta get an editor to cut this stuff because I don't want to.
Tell me hit us up, dude. Trying to work.
I'm gonna hit us up. Not even a joke. Hit us
You
up.
know,
Call us.
honestly, I'll let him know.
Yeah.
But because he needs an editor. But he knew that about himself. Like, you're doing the right thing. You're delegating your weakness out.
Yeah, usually this dude's pretty good about being like, no, cut this out, cut this out, cut this out. And this time he was like, everything's great.
Yeah.
I should have known he was not paying attention.
I watched it twice. I saw them. I was like, this is good. This is what I like.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like, it looks good, but like, on
It's
multiple
hard.
views, you're like, wait.
And then it's also just like something about watching it on like Google Drive and then actually watching it on a reel is different. Like the
I understand
feeling
that.
of it and
Yeah, it
everything.
is.
It's
It's
like
true. It's
it's
not
like
true.
when you know about like car passes and headphone passes, like in audio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You always got to A/B your audio in different speakers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a thing for me that I was always really good at. Like my older brother Anthony and I are photographers, and like he would fucking take forever to select his photos. Like we could each shoot 100 photos, and he would pick a bunch of stuff. Like he would cut the stuff that was like obviously bad that he didn't like, but then there was 2 pictures that he would keep that were similar, and then he would edit both of them and then decide. And I was like, I would edit 100 down to 15. Like I was like, if you tell me that you want 15 pictures, then I'm gonna fucking only edit 15 pictures.
Right.
And I would like sift before I even start editing the photos. I'll like sift through everything.
You do
and-
have
That's
a pretty good. You have a pretty like unique thing about like knowing before. Like I feel like you know when you're taking those pictures. You know when you're filming what is and what isn't already.
yeah,
And you remember it in editing.
yeah,
I can't do that.
Yeah, that's wild.
I feel like
I've seen it happen, and I've been like, "What the fuck? Like, how did you do that right now?" You remember we've done whole episodes where we were talking for 2 hours, and he'll be like, "This moment, this moment, this moment's clips." Like as soon as we cut the camera, and I was like, "How did you?" I can't even remember anything we said.
Because I'm still trying to find moments right now just to say something. Like I'm right here.
Yeah, no, that happens to me too.
I feel like you were gonna say you have a pretty good eye, and then you remembered he doesn't.
Fuck you, you bitch.
Yeah, neither one of them.
Yeah, but I got glasses.
Yeah.
What's your excuse?
I can't wear glasses. They make me look ugly.
Hey,
Imagine this whole time.
hey, wait! I mean,
Just because you can't see yourself.
Okay, this bit's long. This bit's over. Yeah, I don't know.
Point at non-camera. That's funny.
Yeah, skill stuff. But that's what I mean. It's like I know I have skills in other area codes.
Stupid.
Damn.
So dumb.
I had to do it before anyone else did.
Napoleon.
Yeah, and just finding other ways to implement that. Like, yeah, I'm a joke. I can write jokes and I understand humor, but I also can do that in other ways if this whole thing with stand-up doesn't work out. And the thing for me is that I have to be okay with that. I was talking to DG Garcia about this a long time ago about how I was frustrated because I wasn't getting booked on stuff and like, you know, I wasn't able to go out as much, so I'm submitting to things, but I'm not getting callbacks, and I feel like I'm being left out, and it's, you know, very upset about it. And she was like, comedy's supposed to be fun. Like, we should be having fun. Like, she's like, I just like going to shows, like, with my friends and, like, having a good time. And I should listen to her because she's fucking booked every week.
Mm-hmm. Imagine she was like, Dominic, you're being a bummer. And then she goes to her show.
Pretty much. But yeah, it sounds so silly, but it's like, the funny thing is, like, when I was like, I'm fucking quitting. And then I was just like, yeah, I'm going to go to this show just to hang out and, like, fuck on. Like, I'm not going to try to network. I'm just going to, like, go. I got booked on a bunch of shit and, like, all of these people were like, hey, it's so good to see you. We miss you.
Yeah.
We love you.
Do our show. Come work with us. And I was like, okay, if you say so.
All right.
I'll see if I can fit you in.
It really is a weird feeling, like, because even like the last time I did stand up, like I was outside being like, I'm gonna go cross my name off. Like I'm gonna bomb. I was like, I hate these jokes. I hate my life. And then I went in and did the stuff. We talked for a little bit, and I went in and did the jokes, and fucking everyone was like, "This is the best I've ever seen you do."
Yeah.
You murdered.
Yeah.
Told you.
Yeah.
And
Literally, he told me that. And I was like, no, you're going to go up and do them.
Yeah. I was like,
Okay,
I don't know
Ryan,
about
go
this.
ahead and take his credit.
I will. I made Josh. No.
You're nothing without me.
Why'd your voice go up, all right?
There really is something about opening up yourself to things, like essentially letting go of expectation, following joy, like doing what feels good and brings you happiness, but without creating the expectation of a reward. And I think there's something about, like, people can sense it. It's like how you could sense that somebody's looking at you even if you're not looking at them.
I did the same thing to Ricky right now. It's so funny. I wish I would have moved my head more.
You know, like, that's a real thing. Like,
No, yeah,
like the
100%.
humans can sense when they're being watched.
Actually, yeah. Yes, they can.
You can wake somebody up just by staring at them.
Tell me about it. I know.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, I just mean, like, I feel like people can sense it. Like, you have some type of negative energy around you because you're people understand when you're being disingenuous or when, like, you just have something going on, putting out bad vibes.
Right.
So you just open yourself up to the world and, like, just do what feels right and what brings joy, and then stuff like that comes. And it's a hard thing because you really do have to be okay with where you're at.
It's really true.
And yeah.
And honestly, I don't know, because I wasn't comfortable with where I was, and I did great, and it made me feel more comfortable to be where I was. You know what I mean? Like,
You accepted.
Yeah, I got validation while I was experiencing discomfort, and I was like, oh, they like me. It's like what you were saying, like, you were like, fuck all this. And then everyone's like, we miss you. And you're like, oh, this feels good, actually. I do like this.
Maybe I'll stay.
It's
I don't mean to undermine
it's
your
that
point.
acceptance of either or, I think.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I
Like,
think there's a little bit of fear in there.
The thing is,
Sorry.
no.
I know you're trying to rap. Stop it.
You have to be able to pursue something. Like, you have to be able to. You're not gonna. Nothing's gonna move if, like, you don't get up. Like, I'm trying to come up with a metaphor, but I just mean, like, you can be angry and do nothing, but nothing's gonna change. So the thing that you want to actually pursue is following the things that bring joy, and being happy with doing the thing and not expecting the result to come.
I totally understand what you're saying now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Because I don't want to derail it, but I've seen people that are actually even funny, but there's just this entitlement and this bitterness, and everybody's like, I don't even want to talk to them
Yeah.
because of that vibe and energy.
Right,
and there's
right.
like, they're even actually funny, but they're still shooting themselves in the foot. It's interesting.
I felt like that, but for that person that was going after you and Christina at that show, like I thought he was a funny comedian, but he kept attacking and not being funny. Like,
Which guy?
The guy that was like really not gonna laugh at me.
Oh, the open mic.
Was it an open mic? Okay, okay. I don't know why I thought it was a show.
Was it?
Well, I know Dawood like did crowd work with you, but that was way long ago.
No.
Oh, that.
I'm talking
that
about-
guy. That was at a show.
But that was a
Yeah.
long time. But that was fine. That was
No,
fun.
that was fine.
No, I'm talking
This
about
happened like a week ago.
Yeah.
Oh, where?
At
Chatterbox.
Chatterbox.
I forgot about
There
it.
was a comedian. They were sitting right at the front where that lady
Where?
sits with her dog.
Oh, okay.
And this dude was just shitting on Christina.
Yeah, he was shitting on Christina because she was straight. She was not like dying at every single word he said. She was watching his set.
You know what's funny is like he would have a funny joke, she would laugh. He would have a bad joke. He'd look at her and take it out on her.
Yeah.
Who was the headliner?
It wasn't the headliner. It was the
No,
guy.
but who was the headliner?
I have to look it
Yeah,
up.
I don't
I'm
know.
forgetting.
Either. I'm so sorry.
It wasn't last week because I was there. I don't remember.
No,
that.
no.
No, it wasn't
It was
last week.
probably
It
2
had
weeks
to be
ago.
the week before.
Something like that.
Okay.
But yeah,
But yeah, that he would make jokes and his demeanor and stuff. I was like, this is funny. This guy's funny. He was not a bad comedian.
but he has such an internal problem that as soon as a joke didn't land, he started to lash out.
And he did that. He does that thing that a lot of people do when they're not from here, which is they're like fucking Covina, like this is just some shithole bar kind of a thing. And he had that kind of energy, and that was killing his jokes. That's the thing about Chatterbox is that we all know comedy, and we all are expecting jokes.
Right.
And like that's what I feel like that's what Christina was doing too. Like
Yeah.
she was just waiting for a real punchline.
Right.
And she was being fair.
Yeah, she was. And he was doing the thing where he was trying to get a laugh out of one person. He was sacrificing one person for the laughs of everyone, but no one
Right.
was laughing because he wasn't making any jokes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
room for that.
That's one of the benefits of not being able to see. I don't have to worry about people that are not laughing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I can see, and I can't focus on people not having a good time. I only look at people that are laughing. I don't even understand the thing of people being like. I've heard a lot of comedians talk about focusing on somebody who's not laughing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just have a personal issue.
Yeah.
Kevin Macias called me out one time because he was like, you look up when you perform. He's like, you look past the crowd. He's like, who are you looking at?
I'll focus on some. One night I did one and Buster was there, and I just stared in Buster's face the whole time. He was like in my dead line of sight. I can always remember one person from doing it, and I'm like, I keep looking back.
I've
at
also
them.
noticed that where people seek comfort in one person they know,
Yeah.
or like that's familiar enough because they're scared. I've seen it.
That happens
I
to me for
can't.
sure.
Yeah, that's why I can't look at the crowd, because if I make eye contact with somebody, then I'll keep looking back to them.
I'll do that intentionally just to make it look like I'm looking at someone. Everyone else thinks I'm looking at someone random.
Right.
That's how I feel. Anyways, I don't know if it does or not.
Yeah, life's a balance.
I do pretty well though. No, I'm just-
I mean, you do have a good batting average because
I
you hardly go
literally
up.
kill every time. I do pretty well.
that's how it feels. That's how I feel. That's funny. All right. Yeah. Balance is important. Seek joy. Follow your heart.
Yeah.
Pray love.
It's
What?
a good era for us, I feel like. Everybody's going through transitions. And
That's a callback joke.
see you guys next week.
Mustard on the beach.
Don't call it a comeback.